You're just over 30 minutes away from Canada's capital city. This rural part of Ottawa is a suburb located on the Rideau River and feels like a country getaway within the city. It is a heritage village rooted in history with a perfect small-town charm. Named after the Ojibway word for island in the river by its founder, Kent Dickinson, and when you walk around, it feels like you're in a Hallmark movie. You make your way to Dickinson Square, located on the river's edge, to lands first surveyed in 1794 as the ideal site for a mill. That's where you'll find Manotick's most recognizable landmark. It is the only working museum in the Ottawa area, and one of very few operating industrial grist mills in North America, and where you can buy stone-ground whole wheat flour. It's a perfect souvenir, and you're excited because today's visit is extra special. You're going to see the flour grinding in action. The kids can't wait, and they run ahead with their noise-canceling headphones bobbing around in their hands. They know the milling demonstrations are going to be loud, and they are hyped. You walk behind them towards the beautiful stone building, and as you get close, something in one of the windows catches your eye. You see a woman in an old-fashioned 1800s dress staring out the window at you. One of the kids call out to you, and you respond, but when your eye returns to the woman in the window, she's gone. As you enter the mill, you ask about her. You didn't know that there would be historical reenactors on this trip, but that would be such an added treat. The employees look back at you with a confused, yet knowing smile before they say, "That's Ann Currier, the wife of Joseph Currier. She's been here since 1861. I'm Nadine Bailey, and this is Haunted Canada. Join me as I take you to Manotick, Ontario, to one of the province's most haunted locations. This is the story of Watson's Mill. Today's story takes place on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The earliest European record land, Watson's Mill, Dixon House, and the Carriage Shed, sit on dates to a 1794 British Land Survey. John Stigman was the deputy surveyor for the province of Upper Canada, and he identified the location of present-day Watson's Mill as the ideal site for a mill along the Rideau River system. The British had exclusive use of the land until 1840, but it would take another 16 years before Richard Tigg received a crown patent for the land. However, he did not proceed with development, and that didn't happen until Kent Dickinson and Joseph Currier entered the scene in 1858. Kent Dickinson was born in 1822 in Denmark, not the country, but the town in Lewis County, New York. His parents were Barnabas and Linda Dickinson, and they were descendants of the Mayflower Pilgrims. The family had been settled in the United States for generations, but his parents moved to Cornwall, Ontario, when Dickinson was 2 years old. His father and uncle had established a successful stagecoach and postal service that ran between Montreal and Kingston. For his 10th birthday, Dickinson's father took him to the opening of the Rideau Canal in Kingston. This trip would inspire his future. Dickinson moved to Kingston at 22 years old and purchased his first steamboat, a barge called the Rob Roy. He quickly established himself as M.K. Dickinson Forwarding and Commission Merchant. As Dickinson's business grew, so did his family. He married Elizabeth Trigg in 1846, and they had 6 children together: George, Charlotte, William, Alpheus, Linda, and Elizabeth. Alpheus sadly only lived for 3.5 months, and Linda died at 15 from tuberculosis. Through tragedy, Dickinson's business expanded from Kingston, and he moved to Montreal in 1848 and then to Ottawa in 1858. By then, he had a fleet of 16 steamers and 60 barges, and locals started to call him the King of the Rideau. The Rideau Canal, which Dickinson had seen open when he was just 10 years old, was designed and constructed for the Imperial government under the supervision of Lieutenant Colonel John By of the Royal Engineers. His approach was to build dams to raise the water level in the existing channel and eliminate upstream rapids by flooding them out. The dams were then bypassed by locks or sluices, or wasteways were constructed to control the water levels. Villages began to appear at the lock stations since they provided a head of water for milling, and the boats had to stop there anyway. The canal could also be easily crossed by a road along the top of the dam and a short bridge over the locks. A village in what would become Manotick popped up in 1832, and by 1859, a dam near the Long Island Lock Station produced a head of water that enticed Moss Kent Dickinson and his partner, Joseph Currier, to purchase the rights to it. So who was Dickinson's partner? Joseph Morel Currier was born in North Troy, Vermont in 1820. At the age of 17, Currier moved to Buckingham, Quebec, securing the position of laborer at Bigelow's Mill. This began his career in the lumber milling industry. Currier married his first wife, Christina Stenhouse Wilson, in 1846. Together, they had 4 children: William, James, George, and Ida. In 1847, Currier moved his family to New Edinburgh, Ontario, to manage the lumber mills owned by Thomas Mackay. This is where he met Dickinson, and the two formed a formidable business partnership. By 1853, Dickinson and Currier were renting Mackay's lumber mill, and upon his death in 1855, the two took over as owners. Sadly, that same year, 3 of Currier's children died from scarlet fever. Their untimely deaths came within weeks of each other, leaving James as an only child. Then 3 years later, Currier's wife Christina also died. Widowed and heartbroken, Currier moved to Ottawa in 1858 to pursue new business ventures with Dickinson, because that year, a water-controlled dam had been constructed at the site that John Stegman picked as the perfect place for a mill in 1794. A rudimentary sawmill is said to have been owned by Mr. Hubbard, but it was not actually operating on this site when the Royal Engineers surveyed the area in 1827. A control dam had previously been built downstream at the Long Island Locks, but had failed in the 1830s due to the harsh winters and high spring runoff. It washed out on June 8, 1836, and was replaced by the beginning of August, which was no small accomplishment in such an isolated location. The whole scheme was rethought in the 1850s, and a new dam was constructed in a new location upstream, which would eventually become the present Manotick bulkhead. By 1859, Dickinson and Currier leased the water rights at the new dam site from the federal government for $50 a year, as well as 30 acres of the surrounding land to establish a milling complex which included housing for employees. Their grist mill, which still stands today as the centerpiece of the village, went into service the same year, followed by the construction of a sawmill. We know that Dickinson bought 12 acres from Daniel Cameron on the mainland north of Mill Street. The village developed quickly, with new employment prospects and general hustle and bustle drew in virtually all the residents of the former village of Long Island, where only the lock station and the graveyard remained. The Belden Atlas reported, while using dated language of the time, that, quote, in 1859, when Mr. Dickinson purchased, there was but one log house in the village, 100 residents, 5 general stores, 1 drugstore, 1 school, 3 churches, and 5 blacksmith shops. The village had telegraph and daily mail facilities, and Mr. Dickinson named it Manotick, which is the Indian word for Long Island. End quote. Today, we know Manotick comes from the Ojibway word for island in the river. The flour and grist mill, Watson's Mill, went into operation in 1860, followed by a wool carding mill a year later, and a punge, plug, and spill mill in 1875 and 1888, respectively. This became the Long Island Milling Complex, and to develop it, Dixon and Curry entered into partnership with 2 other businessmen, Balsdell and Morrell. Dickinson owned 1/3 of it with Curry, while Balsdell and Morrell shared the other 2/3. As I mentioned, Watson's Mill is a center of Manotick. The 5-story building was constructed by Thomas Langrill from Ottawa. It is made of limestone quarried from the banks of the Rideau River, and wood milled from Dickinson and Curry's own Long Island sawmill. It features ornate interior trim, plaster, and 120 unscarred timbers that support and frame the building, which has large rectangular windows, 5 on the 2nd story and 2 on either side of the main entrance. They allow plenty of natural light to flow into the mill's interior. A sign that reads Watson's Mill is prominently displayed above the entrance, accompanied by descriptions of the services provided, including feed seed cleaning and custom grinding. It was a marvel in the 1860s, and when people first crossed its threshold in February, they noticed a welcoming porch. Today, the gardens are neatly manicured, and benches invite visitors to sit and admire the picturesque surroundings. Flags from Canada and the United Kingdom fly on the side of the building, reflecting its historical significance and heritage. As I mentioned, when it first opened, the mill was outfitted with all the most modern conveniences, including an outward pressure central discharging water wheels, also known as turbines, which were a marvel at the time. The grinding stones were of the finest quality in the world and were imported from France. With all of the latest technology, Watson's Mill began producing 100 barrels of flour a day. And that wasn't all. Dickinson and Curry had a real successful complex on their hands because along with the flour mill, their sawmill could cut up to 2 million board feet per year. As the milling complex flourished, the area Dickinson had dubbed Manotick became the village of Manotick, and it was registered with the county of Carleton in 1862. Then, Dickinson shifted his attention to Ottawa, where he became the mayor from 1864 to 1866, just before Confederation. During that time, he lived in the house which is now the South African Embassy, located at 15 Sussex Drive, directly across the street from 24 Sussex Drive. That home was built by his business partner, Joseph Currier. He had commissioned the home in 1866 because at the same time as Dickinson was the mayor of Ottawa, Joseph Currier was a member of Parliament. It was completed in 1868, and Currier named it Gorfaesfa, which is Welsh for place of rest. In 1950, it became the official residence of the Prime Minister of Canada. A year after he ended his mayoral race in Ottawa, Dickinson built a clapboard structure across from his milling complex. Built in 1867, it would be attached to a cottage Joseph Currier had previously erected around 1859. Dickinson's new building served as the mill's office, as well as a general store and post office. The Dickinson family would eventually make this building their home in 1870. The family's arrival also brought about the construction of 2 carriage sheds beside the home. During this time, the family home continued to operate as the post office and general store on the south side of the ground floor. The Dickinson family thrived in Manotick. By the early 1870s, they owned 160 village lots, 14 commercial lots, and 18 riverfront lots. The children were politically active at the national and local level and were deeply involved in the village's economy, religion, and society. Dickinson expanded the water control dam, which required him to demolish the original sawmill and rebuild it. The new structure was 3 stories, had diamond windows, and added 20 feet to accommodate the bung, plug, and spill mill. By the mid-1870s, the Dickinson family's fortune began to decline. The carding mill was destroyed by fire in 1879, and Dickinson did not rebuild, as he had a hard time repaying his existing debts and mortgage payments. With his finances in disarray, Dickinson re-entered politics. He was elected as the Member of Parliament for the riding of Russell in 1882. In 1887, the sawmill was also destroyed by fire, and Dickinson could not afford to rebuild it. 10 years later, Kent Dickinson died at home in Manotick. By 1897, he was deeply in debt and did not own any property other than the family's home in Manotick and what was left of the milling complex. These properties were left to his 4 surviving children. Dickinson is buried in Beechwood Cemetery beside his wife Elizabeth, who died in 1861. The same year, Ann Crosby married Joseph Currier. One of the main personalities that has shaped present-day Watson's Mill is Ann Crosby Currier. She was originally from Lake George, New York, and met Joseph when he traveled there and stayed at the Crosby Side Hotel for the month of August in 1860. She was the hotel owner's daughter, and Joseph fell madly in love. Anne was tall and beautiful, with dark hair and an olive complexion. The two courted for 5 months, until, on Friday, January 25, 1861, Joseph Currier married the 20-year-old Ann Crosby. The newlyweds spent a month on their honeymoon in the northern United States and then returned to Manotick to be close to Joseph's businesses. Joseph Currier wanted to show off the state-of-the-art Watson's Mill to his new bride. It would end in tragedy. The story goes that at a celebration of Dickinson and Currier's achievements, Anne split from the group to tour the flour mill. Anne was wearing a long crinoline hoop dress, a style that was popular at the time. They consisted of concentric steel hoops attached to vertical bands of tape or braid, which eliminated the need for multiple heavy petticoats, which was how women previously achieved a fashionable wide skirt. The hoops were relatively affordable and quickly became a key part of a woman's outfit, even if the skirts often took up a lot of space on sidewalks, benches, and in rooms. The dresses had a circumference of up to 6 yards, and crinoline dresses were often a cause of death as they would catch fire, get tangled in machinery, or in carriage wheels. They were even susceptible to accidents caused by a sudden gust of wind. A lady like Anne would have a maid help her dress for the day. As she toured the mill, she would have been wearing a fitted bodice with sleeves, and then a caged crinoline, which was worn over a chemise, drawers, and a corset. The dress would enhance her feminine figure by making the waist appear smaller than it actually was. Anne was known for her beauty, so she would have worn her hair parted in the center and smoothly combed back at a low chigon, sometimes allowing loose curls or braids to frame above the ears. To shield her face from the sun, she would have been wearing a hairnet or snood, usually made of silk chenille yarn. Her garments would have been heavy and hot, allowing her very little movement. On the other hand, Joseph Currier would have been dressed in a business suit on that cool spring Sunday afternoon of March 11, 1861. The couple had arrived at the Watsons' mill in a horse and buggy just after noon. He helped Anne down from the carriage, beaming with pride as he showed his new bride the mill. At first, the couple walked arm in arm as Joseph explained the operation. Anne would have been amazed by the numerous belts and pulleys that were being powered by the 5 turbines located in the mill's basement and the machinery on the 3rd floor. She could hear the rushing water from the Rideau River, which powered the water wheel, and smell the freshly cut lumber. She would have felt the entire building vibrating as it worked. Eventually, the couple would have made their way up the wooden staircase to the 2nd floor. Joseph stopped to explain how the fast-rotating shafts worked as his new bride stood close by. Neither of them noticed Anne's massive crinoline dress was inching ever so closer to the rotating shaft. As the couple was engaged in conversation, Anne turned to ask her husband a question. Suddenly, and without warning, her dress flared out and got caught on the rotating shaft. In a second, the machinery violently pulled Anne towards it, almost sucking her in and slamming her tiny body against a wooden support post. Anne Elizabeth Crosby Currier was killed instantly. At the sound of Joseph Currier's screams, workers turned off the machinery. But sadly, nothing could be done. Joseph was shattered. The happy couple had only been married for 6 weeks. He had to be escorted out of the mill. Joseph Currier was heartbroken, never returning to Manotick. Ann Elizabeth Crosby Currier was buried in the Beechwood Cemetery in Ottawa in the same family plot as Joseph's first wife, Christina Wilson. Currier moved to Ottawa after he sold his shares in the Watsons Mill in 1863. That same year, he was elected as a representative for Ottawa in the Legislative Assembly of the Province of Canada. While in Ottawa, he met Hannah Wright, the daughter of Ruggles Wright, and his wife, Hannah Chamberlain, and the granddaughter of Philomena Wright. Joseph fell in love, and in 1866, he promised to build Hannah, his future wife, a grand house fit for a grand party. The home was designed in a Gothic Revival style by his brother, James M. Currier, and construction began that year on a 3-acre property located on the south bank of the Ottawa River. The 2.5-story limestone house was completed in 1868 and became known as Gorfaisfa, which roughly translated from Welsh means a place of rest. Around 500 guests attended the initial housewarming party, including Sir John A. Macdonald. Joseph Currier died in 1884, and the house passed to Hannah, and she still lived there until her death on January 26, 1901. As I mentioned, the home would become the official residence of the Prime Minister. Although Joseph Currier never returned to Manotick during his life, many believe he's still there. Staff at the mill believe the 3rd floor has a dark and sinister spirit that they think might be that of Joseph Currier. The 3rd floor is filled with coal spots, and many report a heavy feeling like they are not wanted. That's because there are conflicting tales of the events that occurred that fateful day. Some think the accident suspicious at best and sinister at worst. Lord Rosebery, a British politician and later Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, kept journals of his visits to North America in 1873. During his time in Canada, he is alleged to have met with Joseph Currier and visited the sawmills belonging to him and his business partners. According to Lord Rosebery, the trip included the mill where Anne was killed. This would have occurred 10 years after Currier had supposedly sold his shares in the Watson's Mill, but these journals contradict the story that Currier never returned. Lord Rosebery's description of Anne's death, though brief, also differs from the typical version of events in key ways. According to Rosebery, Anne didn't die from a strike to the head. Instead, he says that, quote, she was caught in a machine and was cut to pieces before his eyes, end quote. In Rosebery's version of events, Joseph Currier witnessed her death on their wedding day rather than a month later. It is possible, of course, that Lord Rosebery was merely confused or misunderstood. However, what if Joseph Currier had other motives? Anne had a sizable family fortune on account of her family having great success in the hotel industry. Regardless of who the spirit is on the 3rd floor of Watson's Mill, Anne has made the 2nd floor her forever home. Over the years, many have reported seeing a beautiful, tall young woman looking out from the 2nd floor windows. She has been spotted walking from window to window wearing a white crinoline hoop dress. In the mill, unexplainable cold air can be felt on the 2nd floor, along with the sense of being watched. People have reported hearing the sound of a woman crying and moaning out in pain, while others have heard scratching sounds. These strange occurrences always seem to happen around 1:15 p.m., which is believed to be the time when Anne died. Staff and visitors have reported seeing bloodstains and fingernail marks on the post where her body struck the post during that tragic accident over 160 years ago. Today, a black ribbon is tied around the post in her memory. Should you visit Watson's Mill, know that it is well documented as one of the most haunted buildings in the area and has been featured on numerous television shows and podcasts. In 2010, it appeared on a Canada Post stamp commemorating historic mills. While visitors are invited to stop by and explore, be careful around the second floor of this working mill, and make sure to pay your respects and say a kind word to Ann when you see a post with a black ribbon tied to it. Thank you for joining me as we explore the stories surrounding Watson's Mill in Manotick, Ontario. The Edmonton Ghost Tours sponsors Haunted Canada. I will link it in the show notes. Haunted Canada is written and produced by me, Nadine Bailey, with senior producer, Dila Velasquez. Production and sound design is by Rob Johnson, with help from Roslyn Kufer. If you would like to support this podcast, please follow and share, and we would also appreciate a like and a 5-star written review. Also, you can follow me on our different social media platforms, or if you have a ghost story, haunting, or true crime that you would like for us to cover on this podcast, please email me through the website hauntedcanada.com. Thank you from all of us at Haunted Canada and Curious Cast. Have a good night, everyone, and stay haunted.